Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 2 is 4, 4 4 6. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on, honey, don't you wanna go back to the lemon light?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers. I did that good. Only one so far.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Congratulations to Sonny Hirsch, who in his spare time is chairman of the 24th District Advisory Committee for Community Policing, on being nominated, being one of the finalists for a national award for police community cooperation. So congratulations on that one. For community policing, he also runs a website called caps24.org. So if you're in Rogers Park, West Rogers Park, and parts of Edgewater, you can check out where all the latest meetings are, all the alerts. You can also, there's also a place where, you know, like if you see graffiti, snap a picture with your cell phone, send it there. It goes directly to the 24th District Chicago Police Department, where our commander, Thomas Waldera, who's formerly head of Gang Crimes North, can identify whether it's a gang or tag or what gang and all the rest of it, and it works out well. It is a pleasure to introduce you to a first-time guest on the show, and somebody, you know, one of the members of City Council, and actually somebody who actually seems to think for himself from what I've been reading, and I like that. It's a rare trait. I've covered the City Council since the 70s, and I used to refer to it as the Wax Museum. But in this case, this guy isn't, so I'd like to introduce you to Alderman Scott Waguespack. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on today.
My pleasure. Did I pronounce that right?
Waguespack.
Waguespack. Okay,
Yep.
I'll try to get it right. We'll be inviting you back. So tell us, where is the 32nd Ward?
32nd Ward in the old map used to include Ukrainian Village, Lincoln Park, Bucktown, Wicker Park, all the way up to Roscoe Village. Today, after redistricting, it includes Logan Square, Evelost, Ukrainian Village, and still have parts of Bucktown, Lincoln Park, and Roscoe Village. And it's kind of spread a little bit wider than that, but it includes Goose Island, the river area, industrial area.
Yeah, I hope the beer stays there. I like that beer.
Oh, I'm hoping too. Yeah, it's a big business, and you know how it is with a lot of these rents that are kind of driving a lot of local businesses out. We're hoping that they stay.
Yeah, I hope so too. So let me ask you, what got you? How long have you been in politics?
I was in politics before I became alderman, but really I was doing a lot of work overseas and just kind of doing my own thing before I became alderman. I went to Chicago Kent Law School. Hank Parrott was one of my professors and a great mentor for me. And you know, over time I was working with him on things overseas in the Balkans.
Wow.
Spent time in the Peace Corps long before I was alderman. So I've kind of got that sense of, like, you know, I like things outside of Chicago as well. I try not to be myopic and think only of what's happening in the ward or on my block. But you know, over time, I think I started running in 2006 for alderman after kind of seeing the neighborhoods change over time and too much corruption, things not happening
in Chicago, really?
Yeah, you know, who would have thought? So I just woke up one day and said, you know what, I've had enough of things the way they are, at least in my ward, and you know, I want to run for alderman to see how I can change things. And won in 2007, so I've been alderman since then.
Yeah, which, by the way, not usual that you know, like an independent person like yourself can achieve those kind of things.
Right, and you know, I was surrounded by this system of the Rostenkowskis, and then I went to Gabinski, and you've been around probably long enough, you know him, and then took over from Ted Matlack, or beat Ted Matlack. And that, I think, was kind of, in a way, a wake-up call for a lot of people to say, hey, I want to run for alderman too, and I want to change things in the city. So over the this last period of elections, I thought we picked up a few more independent thinkers, and things have been pretty good in the city council in terms of like fighting back on some of the broader issues and saying people need to start looking at things more closely.
I really wish they would. That's an understatement. Now, one of the things that's, well, there's a lot of things coming up. You know, let's talk about the city budget.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, is Chicago broke?
No, we're not. And I know a lot of people, they're like, you know, we're going to be Detroit next. We're broke. We don't have any money for things. I firmly believe the opposite. When you look at the wealth that we have in the city, when you look at the resources, the businesses, the residents who pay taxes, we have, I believe, plenty of money coming in. Our problem is we don't have priorities that reflect what people in the city want to see happen. So we run into projects, or we spend money on things that, you know, major parks downtown, where we're pumping tens or hundreds of millions of dollars into those projects, when I think we should be focused on the neighborhoods and building up neighborhood parks, building up neighborhood schools, because it's in the neighborhoods that Chicago really kind of shines. You know, people, we were just talking beforehand about families moving here and how long, you know, families have kind of come up in different generations, and that's where I think we should have a focus.
No, I agree. I mean, we have a situation right now with Indian Boundary Park, but unfortunately in the 50th Ward, our alderman doesn't have a spine, so probably not much is going to happen. That's a definite problem. But you know what? In terms of the budget, Bernie Stone was on last week's show, and you have, just so you know, I do 2 or 3 shows in a day, so you know, like he wasn't here to see it, but he talked about how, in his opinion, the city's crying poverty with the loaf of bread under its shoulders.
That's right. Yeah,
And
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, he talked about, you know, $600 million or whatever it is. I'm not talking about the TIF funds. First of all, just in various banking resources set aside. Not to mention, depending. You know, he says who knows real numbers, because all an alderman finds out, from what I understand, is just what's in their ward,
right?
TIF-wise. So all 49 of you have to get together, which isn't happening,
right?
Or all 50. But there's that money, and not to mention the fact that he also mentioned that there's so much. He said Rahm had promised, but he promises a lot of things, that they would take an accounting of all the city properties, which hasn't been done maybe in 100 years. You've got all this property that could be sold. Which would also become, you know, like taxable resources, you know, from the real estate tax and all the rest of it.
Right.
Not to mention all these great art treasures, you know, from the 20s and 30s, maybe before or after, who knows. And none of that's being used. Not even to mention, well, one of the things that I'll ask you about, I don't know, somehow the idea of spending $155 million of public money on a private school, you know, on DePaul's new basketball arena, doesn't seem like the thing to do when you're having trouble in other areas.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, they don't even really have that great of a team. So
no, they don't.
That,
I mean, I actually used to go to Alumni Hall in the days they had a team.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And I can understand not being in Rosemont, but, you know, like, they can build their own arena.
Right. And I think they've been offered other venues where they could play for a lot less. And I've heard the specific deals. And that's what's upsetting about what the mayor's trying to push here down at the McPier. Bernie, going back to Bernie Stone real quick too,
Sure.
when I got elected, he was out there saying, we have all these vacant properties, the city owns a lot of property, what are we doing with it? And it took years to get the most rudimentary accounting of what those properties were and where they were and what they were worth. And I think it was after Bernie was gone, but he was the one pushing to get that. And at the beginning, I kind of didn't think too much of it, but when we found out it was in, you know, well over 10,000 properties.
Wow.
And that was at the time of the recession, so it could have been a lot more after the fact. But he's right, there is a lot of wealth out there, and it's just about our priorities. Why are we spending, you know, tens of millions of dollars on a DePaul arena, allowing the McPier people to basically suck money out of the neighborhoods, bring it down there with this whole TIF program, which has hundreds of millions in it, and have a CPS board and these other sister agencies who say, look, we need those funds to continue our operations, which benefit convention goers, which benefit private basketball or private universities. Who suffers? The neighborhood parks, the neighborhood schools, where we're now seeing, you know, a lot of people were saying 50 school closing, but that's okay. They're Black and Hispanic on the southwest side or the west side. And the way we were looking at it was basically saying what's going to happen is the cuts are coming after all of our other schools as well. And sure enough, ROMs come in and we're seeing just drastic cuts across the board at all our neighborhood schools. No math teachers, losing history teachers, losing PE teachers. Those are draconian cuts that affect every child in this city, no matter where you're from, every parent.
Yeah, I don't talk about this too much on the air, but Ram actually is from, he grew up, he didn't grow up, he's not from Chicago, he's from Wilmette.
Right.
But his dad had his practice around Demont and Lincoln. And there's lots of kids from here that, knew him.
Right.
And went to his father, because his father was the main pediatrician for a lot of the Jewish community here. And I read a really interesting story last week. I love going to Real Clear Politics. They're
it's a
actually
good
on
site.
Cicero Avenue. They're from Chicago.
I found that out.
I just found out. In fact, it was Marguerite Quinn that I never knew that before her. So they had a story that somebody wrote who lived in Wilmette. And Dr. Emanuel was nice enough that people didn't have to go to the office if they needed something simple like an allergy shot.
Sure.
So he told the kid, go play in the backyard for half an hour. I want to see if you have a reaction. So it was very nice, okay, the mother just had to drive a couple blocks. Kid goes in the backyard for half an hour. Who's in the backyard? There's Ari, the brother who's the Hollywood agent, and there's Ram, and they're 6 or 7 years older than the kids. And he would basically get beaten up and shoved around just about every time he was there.
Probably didn't like going for his shots. Not because of the poking, but.
Well, anyway, I got to tell you, I think that kind of bullying has gone on since. I mean,
it has.
Yeah, I know myself that, not to mention the language. Not that I ever used that kind of language, but it's like, hi, how you doing? Yeah, blank, blank, blanker.
Right.
Or that sort of thing.
I've experienced that quite a few times.
Oh, then I'm sorry to
on
hear.
both ends, on the physical end of it, the verbal end of it. But to me, it's just it creates more of an effort on my part to challenge him on what he does and the approach that he takes. I didn't grow up that way. And I think if you ask a lot of council members, my approach to things is basically inviting people in and saying, look, here's a different perspective on things.
Yeah.
And it's not this perspective that former Mayor Daley might have had. It's not the perspective that our present mayor has. But it's a perspective, I think, that a lot of people out there share. And it says we can do a lot better in Chicago, and we don't need to be stuck back, in politics of decades ago. We can get out of that.
It would be nice. One of the things that I saw, I know myself, people don't have memories when it comes to like news politics.
Sure.
One of the things I objected to the most was when he wanted to do this little private, fun thing that he would have complete control over. I mean, anytime somebody tells you, we're going to be transparent, you can be sure that they're being transparent, that they're never going to be transparent.
Right.
So
Infrastructure trust you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were talking about that I think it was that trust that put in lights in all these different schools.
That's correct, yeah.
But they're going to get paid back through future energy savings, so it's not like they're doing this for free.
Right. And a lot of the schools are closed now.
Yeah, a lot of them, yes. And
which is just ridiculous. But
well, that's really good planning, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the other
it's sort
thing,
of like when they, you repave the street, then you have the crews come in and start digging holes for electricity, plumbing, all the rest.
Drives me batty.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot.
Yeah.
The infrastructure trust you're just talking about, they just basically voted on this 65 or 63-year deal with the Port Authority on the south side there. Didn't go through city council. We didn't know nothing about it. Saw it for the first time in the newspaper. But they're doing their own privatization schemes. They're basically running and gunning their own stuff. And, who loses out again? It's taxpayers. So it's not that there's a lack of money.
Yeah.
It's just, hey guys, where are you putting that money? How are you spending it? Who's benefiting from it? It's certainly not residents and local businesses.
Yeah, I honestly, well, first of all, I do understand. I mean, it would probably, I would have to be run through city council, I would have to think. In theory, people don't realize that the way the law is written, city council actually has the power, not the mayor, but it never actually turns out that way.
Right, yeah, we never exercise it.
So, I mean, I would think that you need to, but the idea that, okay, I don't want to have to deal with this. This is Ram saying this, I'll just set my own little fund. We'll completely bypass city council. We'll do anything we want, and we'll get money back for it, too.
Right.
You know, and the, you know, all the wax museums are, you know, the only thing I'm curious about is, well, you know, there's no polite way I can say it, so I'm not going to say it, but it's like, how many people can kiss the guys behind? There's no room left. He's got to have hickeys. And that's the polite version, by the way.
Yeah, well, I don't have that problem, so I never worry
Yeah,
about
thank
that.
God. Did they challenge you last election?
They did. I had 3 challengers from 3 different organizations.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty resounding win on my part. We won every precinct in the 32nd ward, and you know, basically won about almost 70%.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was with a lot of, you know, trying to contend with lies and misinformation and all sorts of
In
stuff.
local politics?
Yeah, it's, you know, it's pretty crazy, but yeah, it's pretty tough. But we did pretty well.
No, that sounds good. How many independent best voices would you say are in city council right now?
You know, on our progressive caucus, and I know there was 2 progressive caucuses created. We've been working on ours for the last few years and building it up. We have about 8 people on there that are pretty solid, consistent voting records, because we sit down on Sundays, we sit down on Saturdays, we talk about the different issues that are coming up very fast and try to get our arms around those. You know, and a lot of times we're not given information, so we've got to go dig for it. 8 out of 50, not that great, but we've done a pretty good job of exposing things, which to me, getting information out there, exposing people to what's happening, and providing them information helps to stop a lot of the corruption. It helps to and show people like what's really happening. And I think that's just as important as voting no on something, or you know, fighting in a different way on things.
Yeah, I don't know all the names offhand. I know Bob Fioretti is somebody who's a frequent
Yeah.
guest on the show. We've had John Arena on. I
Yes.
figure he's one. Who are the others?
We have Rod Sawyer, Tony Folks, Leslie Hairston. We've got Rick Munoz from the southwest
I've had
side
Rick
there.
on.
Yeah, and we had a few other people. They've kind of fallen to the wayside. We got Nick Spizzato, but and it's kind of a diverse group.
By the way, fallen from the wayside or gone to the dark side, or
yeah, kind of one and the same. You know, which is kind of disturbing. I think some people kind of came in and we were expecting something else, and you know, that's their own prerogative.
Yeah.
But we were kind of expecting a few more people to join in. But that's how things work out.
well, you know, people. I unfortunately, you know, it's funny. Bernie Stone, through the years, put together his staff with people that used to oppose him. And unlike our present alderman, his idea was that he was nice to everybody, period. Well, actually, he and I initially were a little gruff with each other, but we were working on the other side, opposite sides of the fence. But he actually turned his enemies into friends, you know, and people actually got respect for him. And like I said, a good chunk of his staff were people that originally opposed him.
Yeah.
But, you know, he won him over. And it wasn't just a matter of bribery either. It wasn't anything like that. You know, he saw good people, he wanted them, and but, you know, they had a trust in him too. You don't want somebody on your staff who's going to stab you afterwards.
Sure.
So, you know, it's a lost art in some ways, that sort
And
of thing.
I think it's important to have good staff that challenge you at the same time. On just about any issue out there, I tell my staff, you better tell me what the other side of the story is.
Yeah.
You know, because if I'm missing something, I want to hear it. You know, and I think that's important. So my staff challenges me quite a bit. I'm very open in terms of, you know, trying to get people to come into the office, emails. I go to as many neighborhood meetings as I can. And hey, when we're wrong, we admit it.
Yeah.
You have to think things through and get all sides so that you have a very good approach to how you're doing things.
Were there any public schools closed in your area?
There was one, well, over the last 3 years, I've had 3 on different lists. And what we did with those was literally, in a nutshell, tell CPS, look, give me the resources to make these schools better. New principal, you know, an influx of maybe some new teachers, change things about, put together a Friends of organization, a stronger LSC, and work with the schools. And we've turned all of them around.
Cool.
All of their grades have gone up on an upward trajectory for the last 3 years. They're award-winning schools, and these were schools that were pretty much down in the dumps. CPS was ready to close them, and I just said, when I got in particular, give me the opportunity to help them.
Yeah.
and they are very successful now. So we're happy about that. But it takes somebody coming in and saying, I'm going to challenge you, and maybe some new leadership in the school to do that. So.
Yeah. Do you have regular meetings with ward residents or things like
I do. I used to have weekly ward meetings, but frankly, I just had 2 boys in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
My wife and I. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm a little busy with that, but so I've scaled back. We have it once a month, but we go to most of the CAPS meetings.
Yeah.
And we have about 18 different CAPS meetings.
Wow.
And then also for 4 different districts. Well, one of them's down now, 19 since that's been
Right, that's been
merged
combined
in.
with 23, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So then neighborhood meetings, we have about 14 different organizations. So we try to go to those meetings. SSAs, chambers, you name
Cool.
it. So I try to get out to those and provide just a venue for people to speak with us.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you: when you're at a meeting, like, I mean, do you take the lead there when necessary? I mean, do you sit and listen? What's your philosophy for those things?
If it's a development meeting, we'll take the lead and we'll let the developers kind of say their piece, and then we'll tell them what our opinion is on it, and we leave it open for discussion. We never sign off on a deal right away. The developer has to provide all sorts of information through a zoning process that we created, so that everything's out there in the open and everybody can have access to it. It's on our website.
What is your website?
It's ward32, W-A-R-D,
Yeah.
32.org. That's my office website.
Cool.
And I have a political one too, but that's Scott for Chicago, if you don't mind.
No,
.com.
please, absolutely.
ScottForChicago.com, and I try to build that up as well.
Two T's?
2 T's, yep.
Okay.
And we, we try to put as much as we can out there. Anybody can come into the office and have access to our files in terms of developments, things that we're working on. Our menu money that we spend throughout the ward, we put that on our website so that everybody can see it's split up pretty evenly every year. And just try to do things that way so that people understand, they do have a say in what goes on. When we show up at a meeting, if sometimes the city comes in and they're not prepared for meetings that they're doing, and we'll critique those meetings, but a lot of times I feel like I can just walk in and after a few minutes, I'll say, look, let me run the meeting. Because you're generating more animosity than there needs to be, and let's just, try to straighten things out. So sometimes I'll take over the meetings, but I try to let everybody make sure they have their input.
Yeah, I'm just curious because you know what? I don't have experience in other wards. Community policing, which 18 years ago, somebody asked me to, chair the beat for a couple of months till they found a replacement.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the replacement.
You're a lifelong CAPS officer there.
I should have known better. Well,
yeah.
I'm a civilian, let's understand, but, I like working with the police. It's funny because I really had all sides. I covered the police in the 70s. Matter of fact, you know what? You're actually looking at a guy who at one time was the token white guy in the Daily Defender. And I used to go down to 26th and Cal and, cover criminal court building.
Wow.
And it was
must have been fun back then. Yeah.
Oh, fun. You know what?
Still is. I don't think it's changed much, but.
It was a culture shock. Excuse me. I was actually, I had gotten great LSAT scores. I wanted to be a defense lawyer. I had these, glorified versions of, Clarence Darrow and things like that.
Sure.
When I saw what really happened over there, it was culture shock.
Yeah.
Absolute culture shock. And you know what? I'll tell you one thing. One of the bailiffs who was helping handle the press and all that, we hit it off right away, and he basically told me that you can count the number of honest judges in this building on the hand of three-finger Mordecai Brown.
Yeah. Is that before Silver Shovel, I guess?
That was before Silver Shovel. That was before Greylord.
Greylord.
It was before all that stuff. But I've been a police reporter in stations and all the rest of it. The CAPS thing, I've been both sides of it, and other than the jail part.
Yeah.
But I've even served on juries, and it just, okay, so CAPS meetings. When Alderman Stone was there, Alderman Stone basically did not go to the CAPS meetings, although he was always in direct contact with the police and did whatever they needed, because he felt it would be intimidating to people there who should also have the right to complain about him.
Yeah.
Okay, our present person shows up and basically says things like, well, if you call my office at blah, 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 but it's never anything more than, what a person could do for themselves calling 311. Because as close as I was with Alderman Stone for so many years, I never called this office. I just called 311.
Sure.
And I probably got the same thing.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have, staff that go with us as well, volunteers. That was one thing. When I came on board, nobody was going to the CAPS meetings.
Yeah.
And I reached out to some of our volunteers, Steve, who's like your Sonny, a lot of people who...
Oh, and thanks, Steve, for bringing the Alderman here today.
he,
What's his last name?
Jensen.
Okay.
Steve Jensen.
Thanks,
so
Steve Jensen.
he's also, become more involved in the community, the Bucktown Neighborhood
Yeah.
Organization as the president. And what I've driven people out there to do is say, go get involved in a neighborhood group. Would you please volunteer for me for the CAPS meetings? I try to go to them. I have staff that go to them. But these volunteers, facilitators, it's great to have people out there doing that. It takes a little bit of the politics out of it. I'll go and, we have such a good rapport with our police officers that a lot of times we'll sit down with them after and have a coffee or something before they go back out and talk, and we'll just go down through the list of things. How are we going to solve that problem that we just talked about in CAPS? So we've built up a pretty good rapport with a lot of the officers. And look, with the way things are right now, there needs to be a lot more done in the city. We need more police officers. We need more people involved. And that's the other thing. What are our priorities on fighting crime? What are our priorities on getting more police officers out there? Because we've got so many retiring. A lot of them have left over the last few years, and we haven't replaced them.
Yeah, the city actually encouraged people to retire early, giving
Right.
them extra perks, which I can only imagine how wonderful that's going to be for the pension fund 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, we lost great guys here. No
We did.
question. And the most
did.
experienced, brightest
And
in some cases.
and we're seeing an uptick in crime in our area. I mean, the burglaries and the robberies have gone up dramatically. That doesn't bode well for a city that has so many resources. And going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, it's all about your priorities and what are you looking at in the city as a whole, and are you looking at all the communities out there? And one community having problems affects everybody else. It's like dominoes. So we can't ignore what's happening in one part of the city to the detriment of another.
No, it's very true. As a matter of fact, just for this area, there was recent flooding in Albany Park during
Right.
the big rainstorms. So they're talking about diverting the water. Well, I've always had good relations with the water reclamation people. So Terry O'Brien, even though he's retired, came on
Yeah,
and basically said, all you're doing is pushing the problem.
right.
You're just going to have the water spreading somewhere else where it's going to bother people and just taking the edge off them for a while.
And the solution is,
Well, basically, if it's going to rain, like I'm a religious guy, obviously aware of this. If God's going to send you 4.5 inches of rain, there is no solution.
that's right. That's what I try to tell people. They don't like to hear that sometimes.
No, it's true. You know what? It's like underneath there's like 2 feet of soil in Chicago. Then there's a layer of clay. Now, clay is like,
Mush,
your
thick,
pottery,
yeah.
porcelain.
Yeah,
The water's not going to penetrate that. Even if the deep tunnel was finished, that's 23 billion gallons of water. The average rainfall, 1 inch of rain in Chicago is 15 billion gallons. That's 1.5 inches of rain. If you get 4.5 inches of rain, it's an act of God, and God pretty much has the say in these deals.
right.
So it's kind of rough to get around that.
Man, yeah, humans cannot counter what he's gotten and out there for us. So
Yeah.
it's hard as an alderman to tell people that. No, look, I can't just rebuild your sewer to make it bigger, to take more water on, and we're going to see more and more of those. And whatever he's telling us out there,
Yeah.
We've seen that increase, but it's really hard to work through that kind of stuff. And I get flooded all the time too, all the time. And I try to tell people that, and a lot of times they'll get back on there and say, well, I don't really give a darn, and
Yeah.
more flowery wording. But
Yeah, well, thank God whoever waterproofed this house did a great job, because my neighbor gets it big.
yeah,
But thank God we get just a little trickle.
yeah.
And no, it really works out that way. Anyway, Mickey's hands are really there. So I want to thank you very much, Alderman
You're
Scott.
welcome.
Waguespack?
Waguespack, yeah.
Great. And if people want to
Appreciate it.
contact you?
I'm at www.ward32.org or 773-248-1330. But, there's a lot of ways to get in touch with us.
Great. And thanks to Steve Jensen for bringing you. Thank you. Sonny is also on Facebook. Bye, everybody.